at Princeton, half the class was applying to McKinsey.
We used to say, very frequently in McKinsey, it just doesn't matter if you have the best possible answer in the world. If the client says no, it just doesn't move. If they're not interested, it's doomed. I'm called into the middle of nowhere. 50 CR INR is what you have to unlock. I used to keep chatting with partners and they're like, no, still doing this day in and day out. They're still creating the slides. They're still doing the top down. They're still doing the edits and they're still learning through the process. McKinsey never knew that this is the answer for the client. That's the important part. You're not in it for a transaction. You're in it for life. How do you get this child to the best version of their adult self in the next 2, 3, 4 years? If you made the same profile 2 years in a row, the same college which accepted this profile is gonna be far more likely to reject it the second time around.
What do you think will come out of the AI revolution?
The worry for me is people using AI as a substitute to thinking. Why are we still a single planet species? What would going beyond the solar system look like? What would it imply for there to be no second class and third class citizens?
Hi everyone, I just had an amazing conversation with Revant Soni, Athena's Chief Operating Officer. We talked about his experience at McKinsey, the frameworks and principles that we're implementing here at Athena, how we combine creativity and logic. We talk about the future of the world and how AI is disrupting education and work, and even our favorite Pixar movies. So whether you're a student, a parent, or an aspiring team member, I think it's going to be full of insights. Check it out. Revant's been an amazing few months working with you. By the way, what I found most intriguing when we were in the recruitment process was not IIT Delhi or IIM Ahmedabad or even McKinsey for a few years. It was the fact that you published books on philosophy and poetry. And I remember seeing your Amazon page and thinking, this guy is a first-class weirdo. He's going to fit in perfectly into Athena. So what inspired some of these creative pursuits?
No, I've been writing poetry since I was very young, 8th or 9th standard. Very inspired by nature around me. Grew up around the Aravallis. Could literally just go walk up a hill when I chose to and watch sunset from there, or just enjoy the bustling of trees in a monsoon. So those are things that just...
So as a kid, you walked through the hills, sat down and wrote poetry?
No, so I walked to the hills, sat down, enjoyed the sunset.
Got it. Came back
and wrote poetry. But no, it was always fascinating to express yourself, and poetry in some sense being an spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. That's where I was, and I was just letting my emotions out in the way I felt them, and that was very cathartic for one. And as long as you're writing for an audience of one, which is what I've always done, I was fine. So yeah, that's where it started, and thankfully I've been able to keep up with it.
Yeah, got it. I find it really interesting because I think I look at you, and I think most people who work with you look at you as someone who is extremely rational, reasonable, logical. But you say that you have these overflowing emotions as well. How do you see the juxtaposition, or how do you synthesize reason and emotion? I know it's a very philosophical question, but I think you like that.
Sure. No, look, it is left brain plus right brain for me in some sense. So I'm left-handed, so there is creativity and emotion that comes naturally to me as much as the left brain stuff, which I have cultivated through years and years of practice in some sense, and you keep learning. But I think just marrying the two faculty together is just super important in any human endeavor, and especially so what we do in a consulting sort of space, because it's not just about the data and the decisions that come from data, but are you able to connect with the individual and make them appreciate what the data says, right? So we used to say, very frequently in McKinsey, it just doesn't matter if you have the best possible answer in the world. If the client says no, it just doesn't move, right? Because you're not the one doing it. It's the same thing in Athena. You can come up with the best possible project or the best possible profile for a kid. If they're not interested, it's doomed. It doesn't matter how much you want to push that through, right? So that's where, if you don't have the human connection, all data, all logic, all reason fails. And the other way around, if you're just riffing in creativity and it doesn't have a structure or a sense to it, it's just gonna go all over the place. So.
Amazing. I think that's such a cornerstone of what we're doing here at Athena. I would love to understand more. At Princeton, half the class was applying to McKinsey. It had this majestic aura around it. There are many great consulting firms. But McKinsey has this unique brand. What was that like? And what were some of the principles and frameworks that really shaped your thinking in those early years?
Sure. So I think a bunch. Number one was just the amount of trust that was thrown onto me from the moment I joined as a summer intern. I'm a summer intern, get my first call. I'm called into the middle of nowhere. So this is like, hey, take the next flight to Bhubaneswar. 4 hours from Bhubaneswar is where your client site is.
Was it a factory?
Yeah, it was a factory.
Got it.
You get there.
Okay.
And you meet your team manager and they are like, okay, we're doing this advanced analytics stuff for our clients. I don't know anything about it. Right.
Okay.
And there are a bunch of these digital use cases we're doing. 50 CR INR is what you have to unlock for the client in the next 2 months. Get a sign off from clients, and that's your job. Thank you. I've never seen that kind of money in my life yet. And I don't know a thing about advanced analytics. And I don't know a thing about McKinsey, right? I've just been there.
Just joined.
Couple of days of whatever formalities and telling us a little bit about the problem solving techniques and stuff. And they just throw me in front of the client and be like, hey, here is your plant. Here is your stakeholders.
Save this plant 50 CR in 2 months.
That's it.
Nothing else.
Very simple. Right. So the amount of confidence, and it's not as if I'm going to a meeting together with a senior person and they're going to be explaining everything and I'm going to be taking on notes. No, it's your work stream. It's your freaking work stream. You have to deliver this 50 CR on you. You have all the support in the world you need, but this is your baby. You deliver or not, fully on you. So extremely, difficult, but also inspiring in some sense because it asks you to rise up to the challenge and figure your stuff out. So, figured out what this advanced analytics thing was. Figured out who are the stakeholders and how to, get them to agree to whatever we were doing. And it's extremely crazy. Number two was, this whole thing around top-down communication in some sense, right? Struggled with it for a long time because I was like, okay, if I'm talking to this person at the plant and he doesn't care what my vision or the answer is. He wants to go through the nitty-gritty of the stuff and then reason your way to the answer. The moment I started interacting a lot more with CXOs, I realized just cannot work. They have the attention span of 2-year-old. 30 seconds, they're just going to be dead if you keep talking about the granular analysis you did on their 3 years of data and 10,000 parameters that you studied and whatever else happened in the world. By the time you get to the results, they're yawning and they're out and they're on their phones or whatever, right? Just cannot come through. So just developing the top-down communication as a muscle to give your answer first, followed by the rationale for the answer, was a big sort of shift to me. So that
Got it. This is actually something that I see you instilling in the team as well. Sometimes we also, because we've done so much work, we've spent weeks coming up with a strategy for a student. So we want to tell that entire story. Absolutely. And I think in a number of meetings, you're like, okay, just give me the answer,
Yeah.
right? This is not a Harry Potter novel. We don't have to save the climax for the end.
I don't need to know 5 minutes about the scholar before you tell me what your problem statement is. First, tell me what your problem statement is, and then I will ask you questions around, hey, why is this a problem? Or
got it. Then we'll double click and
then
go
we'll
into
double click
that.
and double click. But I need to know like what the problem is in the first statement that you call out before going into the details.
Got it. I mean, the problem and your proposed
And the
solution.
proposed
This is
solution.
the
Yeah,
executive
absolutely.
summary.
Absolutely.
Okay, so number one is the trust. Number two is how to communicate with different stakeholders and knowing who wants the 10-minute the 10-minute summary or 10-minute version, who wants the 1-minute version, who wants the 10-second version, who might want the 1-hour version, and being able to structure a conversation accordingly. Okay, got it.
So yeah, I mean, communication in McKinsey was like a big part of what you did, right? So every time you're looking at a manager, a partner, a senior partner communicate, you realize, the way they can lift up a very basic thought into something really amazing and that truly lands with the client one shot. That is things. And I used to like keep chatting with partners and they're like, still doing this day in and day out. They're still creating the slides. They're still doing the top down. They're still doing the edits and they're still learning through the process. Right? Crazy. So that was important. I think, so that was two. I think third was just the way we did problem solving in a way, right? Very famous for hypothesis driven problem solving, where you're not looking at, let me come to the best solution in the world and then implement it for the client, but saying, hey, here is what I believe is the 80% answer. Here is what I'm going to tell you either way. And we're going to start trying to do it. I'm not going to waste a month in analysis paralysis before I tell you what might be wrong. I have a hypothesis, or I have a couple of hypotheses that I want to test. I'll just go do it.
But just to understand that a little bit better, to play devil's advocate, might that lead to confirmation bias? Because if you're like, okay, my intuition is, my hypothesis is this, and Winston Churchill said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? How do you avoid identifying statistics, identifying numbers that then validate your hypothesis? Wouldn't it make more sense to just do a comprehensive survey of all the data and then let the data speak to you? Explain to me why McKinsey adopts the hypothesis-based approach.
Sure. So I think it's the same local versus global maxima problem, right? You can get the best possible outcome with the best possible data in front of you. All executives operate with incomplete data, right? And there's this quote on lies, damn lies, and statistics, because data is not always perfect. Right? So you can keep arguing that this data is the gospel, and hence you want to believe in it. If your client disagrees, it doesn't matter, right? So it's about building up from, hey, what does my client want? And often our clients have a hypothesis. So I would rather disprove this hypothesis first, then to say, hey, whatever you're saying is wrong. Here is, by the way, a better answer, and please do it. They're just not gonna take it unless you have gone through the hypothesis that they already bring to the table. You know what I mean?
Got it. Okay.
So the moment you start a McKinsey engagement, right? And it's very similar in Athena as well, by the way, with parents already wanting something for their kid. And unless you can prove that this is something that the kid is not interested in, and by the way, let's explore something else. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to either say, hey, data tells me this is just not going to work, or you have to say, hey, by the way, I have looked at the data. Does look like an interesting answer. Let's explore if this is indeed true. Maybe 2 weeks later, you figure out that this is true enough for us to start moving. Or you say, hey, not true at all. These are the red flags. Let's stop. But without addressing this hypothesis that has already come in, you can't move forward.
Got it. Okay. So the hypothesis at McKinsey with companies would be like, okay, we need to expand into tier 2 cities or something like that.
Sure.
And the hypothesis at Athena would be you should aim for law programs in the UK.
Yep.
Let's say. And that will be ideal from both an educational and a professional standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And then you test that out by looking at the students' talents, passions, aspirations, the family's aspirations, and all of that. Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. And if you disprove the hypothesis, no ego. Yep. If you prove it, then I think your intuition was right. Let's double down and understand it better. If you disprove it, then what's the next most reasonable hypothesis?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. What are some other frameworks that really help you when you're tossed into a situation like this in a factory 4 hours from Bhubaneswar and you need to save it 50 CR? How do you structure that?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where a lot of help is needed. If you're a summer intern here in McKinsey, you need help from people who know how to structure it or can help you structure it in some sense, right? Because you can do a first principles and say, hey, here are buckets in which I can solve for it. But somebody who understands what this type of client is or what this type of plant is, or what are typical value levers to use in order to extract this value are super helpful. So we had, Indian experts who were on the ground who you could get in touch with. There were global experts who were always available if you just, shoot them an email or give them a call and just say, hey, really need help with this. So that's what helps. There are experts also who are on the client service team in some sense, the partners, senior partners serving that client and can give you more context on, hey, this is the kind of client that you're dealing with, right? So just getting that information together and pulling in those inputs is super helpful. So it's what do you extract from these people and then synthesize into saying, hey, here is what will work, or here is our hypothesis of what might work, which is important, right? Then, of course, you do the math of validating, hey, okay, if this is the problem, and I was working on like mean particle size of a plant, so super technical and complicated. But once you figure out, hey, if I move from X to Y on this parameter, it actually is giving you the 50 CR or whatever value capture that you're looking for. Here is what the experts have told me. Look at these 5 parameters. These are typically the problem because, again, I'm not an expert in every plant and every field, but just having that R of the expert in validating what I'm thinking or knowing, which direction to go in is super valuable. Then I can be a super cool, generalist who processes the data, goes back to the client and says, hey, here's what I think can work.
Got it. Yeah, it's super interesting. I like to joke that in academia, it's called plagiarism. In business, it's called best practices. So I think it's helpful to always start with who has already solved this problem, right? As opposed to the brute force method of gathering all the data.
Yeah.
Who has unique insights into this field, and how do I pick their brain to formulate this hypothesis? I think that makes a lot of sense. I really love kind of how much clarity the team has demonstrated recently. I think in previous years or in college counseling generally, it's tempting to fall to a template. Okay, my senior in high school did XYZ. I need to do XYZ. Or my cousin from New Jersey did ABC. I need to do that. What I love is how we focus on what can this kid be the best at.
Yeah.
Start with that. What's their dharma, karma, purpose, ikigai?
Yes.
How can we use what McKinsey does to very quickly identify a student's dharma, karma, purpose, ikigai? And what is that point in which okay, this hypothesis is proven. Let's move forward. Let's double down. Let's not keep ideating.
Sure.
Any insight into that?
Sure. No, I think, look, there is, the important thing is to stay nimble. The honesty is McKinsey never knew that this is the answer for the client.
Oh my
And
God.
the same way, we never know that this is the answer for a child, right? However diligent you are, whether you speak to the child once or 5 times or 500 times, um, and you can conceptualize the best possible project for the child. It is so often that we come back and say, hey, parents don't like it, child doesn't like it. Child, by the way, started with it and a month later just lost motivation. We same thing, right? McKinsey, we tried a solution. Month later, we realized it's just not yielding results. So I think the important thing is, if you're just super high on ego and you're like, hey, I have the best possible answer and this works or nothing works, and everything else be damned, just doesn't work. When you're doing a client service as a profession, you need to be super agile in saying, okay, if this doesn't work, here is option 2. If this doesn't work, here is option 3. And you won't believe how often our conversations internally used to be just that. Hey, it doesn't seem to be working. Client doesn't seem to be aligned. What else can we do? Or hey, has someone just understood the client enough? Are we spending enough time with the client to develop this relationship so that we're all on the same page? So if you're cooking up projects for a student in isolation and nobody's talking to the student or the family, it's the same thing with a client. You're more often than not, you're just going to be screwing it up. The same way, it is still going to evolve. You've given an answer, they're super excited by the answer, we're moving, and 2 months later, 6 months later, a year later, clients flip, both places. So that's absolutely natural and that's absolutely fine, right? I think
what you're saying is it has to be iterative.
It has to be iterative. It's just the only way it works. There is no, the answer.
I think that makes sense. With some of our team members, sometimes they come to me and they say, we want to switch the direction, but Rahul, you ideated this project.
Yeah.
And I say, perfect. Tell them that Rahul ideated a substandard project.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, I think the client trusts you more when you say, you know what? I have more information now.
Yeah.
I've thought deeper about your child, their talents, their passions, their aspirations.
Yeah.
And based on everything we discovered over the past 3 to 6 months, we think we should pivot in this direction.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
And I have found that that leads to deeper relations between consultants and clients because they know that you're not withholding anything because you want to look good. You don't want to switch gears. You want to make it seem like everything we proposed earlier was rock solid.
Yeah.
But I think embracing this iterative process and being like, okay, we're constantly evolving. We're constantly incorporating new data points and experiences. And kids are evolving. I mean, kids from the ages of 13 to 18 are exploring new topics, exploring new activities. So it's very possible that they want to change gears.
No, absolutely. And I would be surprised if they're not evolving, right?
Yeah, that would be a problem.
So yeah, that's just the nature of the business. And again, the reason McKinsey has held on to a lot of these clients, I think, at least while I was there, McKinsey used to serve like 70% of Fortune 500s. And I think, or maybe 80 or 90% of Fortune 500s.
Amazing.
70% of that was like a relationship which is more than a decade old, right?
No.
That's the important part. You're not in it for like a transaction. You're in it for life. So the same thing that you said, how do you get this child to the best version of their adult self in the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever time they're engaged with Athena and beyond? How do you put them on that trajectory? It's just so super important. And, absolutely. Someone's saying, hey, this is what I did because Rahul recommended it or Revant recommended it or because this is what my child a year back did is absolutely the wrong way to approach it. Right? Just saying, hey, I have understood this child. I've gotten started on this project. It doesn't seem to be panning out. I feel their interest lies more in why rather than let's pivot. So the faster you are able to pivot and just communicate very transparently, right? No parent, like you said, is going to disagree to the fact that, hey, your kid has evolved. They're clearly more interested in this new subject area now. let's do something around it. So I think the whole concept of copy pasting profiles or just curating profiles out of thin air, it just doesn't work, because this thing is a process. You want to be able to live with the process. You want to be able to give the right amount of time, energy in the process. And, that will involve a lot of evolution as you keep discovering more.
Got it. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. If I were to ask you, Athena, I mean, I wake up every morning thinking about how do we make Athena the gold standard, not just for college counseling, but life mentorship for teenagers.
Yeah.
How do we bring in the best practices from McKinsey and more evolved industries into what we're doing here? What would be your vision for the next year?
Sure. So I think, number one, we have a pretty strong base already. What we have done so far and have been doing, we've set up a very strong foundation for a lot of enablers that are in place. I think the difference for Athena, and that you keep calling out, is it's not just consulting. It's consulting plus creativity in some sense, right? Because you have to be crafting extremely unique profiles for scholars.
Right.
At McKinsey, it would be a lot more about best practices and, hey, what is the best company in this industry, or what are my 3 competitors doing? Can you give me some insight on that? And we're able to bring in those insights and give them, hey, here are the best practices, here's what everyone else is doing, and then you try to emulate that in some sense to become better at doing what you're doing. I would argue college counseling, because there are a lot of process areas which we can borrow from other companies and keep improving, but fundamentally, if you made the same profile 2 years in a row, same college which accepted this profile is, gonna be far more likely to reject it the second time of asking, or the third time.
They've seen it already.
They've seen it already. The amazement that they felt in the previous year of seeing this profile is not the same as the amazement next year, and so forth. So just borrowing best practices on profile development and just saying, hey, I want 2 competitions, and I want this Olympiad, and I want this community oriented project, and I want 1 tech project, and I want 1 research project, and now my profile is so rock solid. It doesn't work. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The thinking behind it, which we've been talking about, what's the student brand, what are the unique way in which this child expresses themselves in the world, is just so important.
Got it.
So I think this is what we have to figure out a way to keep and grow at Athena, right? The left brain plus right brain magic is just so important, so real, and that is something I want to protect in some sense. While we grow on processes, while we grow on the paraphernalia around it, of course, I want to make sure that we are able to make processes faster. I want to make sure that we are able to deliver projects faster for students. I want to make sure that there are more diverse opportunities for our students to explore. And those are things that we are working towards very actively. While we do that, I want to protect this creative side of the field, because this is the only way we can, succeed. And if we can find a way to do this creativity at scale, to say, yes, I'm going to be working with thousands of students, but I'm going to be giving that personalized attention to every student, right? And that's where I think some of the work we do around making sure every consultant is working with a limited set of clients. They are able to give enough time and energy into saying, what is the best strategy for this scholar look like? It's just so important. And then just being able to play around with it, just being able to say, yes, we are going to evolve. It's not going to be the same as the other scholar you had from 2 years ago. And it's very hard. Human tendency is to compare.
Mm-hmm.
But, constantly pushing back and saying, I don't care what the comparison is. And saying, hey, here is the unique way we're going to go, right? The same way, if you want to compare Athena, we don't say, hey, Athena is like X, whatever that X is, right? In any industry. We have such a unique positioning. We don't give a damn about who else is out there in our industry or any other industry. There is a consulting part, there is a creative part, and we are trying to marry.
There's an academic part.
There is an academic
research
part,
and tech.
Absolutely. So we are doing something that no one else has dared to do, and I think that's exactly the way we want each of our scholars to feel. That they are doing something that no one has dared to do yet, and they are finding their own unique path in the world. And that is like incredibly exciting.
Amazing. I think you captured that so beautifully. So you're saying we need to really know who we are. And who we are is, of course, we're getting students into top universities, but beyond that, we are preparing them for successful, fulfilling, transformative lives. I think one question we love to ask students is, what does your ideal life look like at the age of 30? In just a metaphor in karate or in any martial art, if you want to break a board, that's like a rite of passage. But you never punch the board, you punch beyond the board. So you need to think beyond college. And ironically, that's what colleges want. They want kids who are thinking about not just, I want to get into said institution, but they're thinking beyond. This is my vision for the world. This is how I want to contribute. These are my unique talents, passions, aspirations. This is what I can give. And a university's brand is ultimately what students do beyond. So if we can get them to think that way, they get not only amazing results, but also amazing lives. So that's really brand Athena. And I love what you said about blending left brain and right brain. I think it goes back to the philosophy, poetry, and IIT and IIM. And the fact that you're left-handed. So how do we embrace the liberal arts? And one thing that's super interesting is we'll have a very left-brained or right-brained meeting in which we're like generating so many crazy ideas trying to connect history with AI. And then in the next meeting, we'll be discussing Airtable flows, which are very, very, very systematic. So I think as an organization, not just the organization as a whole, but what we wish for every single individual at Athena, team members, students, parents, is to become a whole-brained, full-stack human, if you will. And we draw from different industries. We've talked about McKinsey. We've talked about McCann in terms of creating, advertising campaigns. In many ways, an application is an advertising campaign. You have to convince not entire markets, but a single or a collection of admissions officers, as well as so many other industries. And I really, really, really enjoy those conversations with you. I think the vision for Athena has just blossomed over the past year or so, and I'm super excited to see the amazing work that all of us do together.
Awesome. So, question for you then, Rahul. This expression of left brain plus right brain, what does that mean for you as an individual? What do you find joy in doing? And when are you at your joyous best?
Speaking of companies that inspire us, it would be Pixar, right? Like I grew up watching Pixar movies, from the Toy Stories to Cars 2, which is so underrated, but I love that one. And so many others. How do you create a culture that produces creativity consistently? Like the vision for Athena is that it feels like a studio, a bit like a creative academy in which people are bouncing ideas off each other all the time. I love the diversity here. We've got people from tech and product. We've got people from literature and the humanities more generally, and everything in between. And how do you process creativity and make it not a one-off thing, but something that we work toward every day? So I think you've got the creativity, which is right brain, but processing it out and building a culture around it, being very intentional about that culture and what we stand for, that requires some left brain thinking. And that's what I want to strengthen in the coming months.
Got it. And which Pixar character would you be?
Which Pixar? Oh, that's a good one. I think I like Woody. Like he's got this growth arc in that he was very individualistic a bit, and then he becomes more of a leader, becomes more selfless. So I think I identify with him. Who else? Anyone come to mind for you?
Me? I haven't been watching as much Pixar as you, for sure. But no, really like the character arcs of a bunch of their people. I really loved the emotion movie they had about anger and sadness and
Inside Out. Yeah,
Inside Out. Yeah, so the Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2. I think Inside Out 2 would resonate a lot more with our audience because it's like adolescence and the amount of emotions to go through to it. But yeah, just trying to figure out the different parts of your mind, different emotions in your mind, and how do you bring them all in harmony to help you achieve the best results possible. I think that's something that a lot of our adolescent scholars strive to do, and that we strive to do together with them on how do you find that balance. And that balance means like very different things for different individuals. So how do you find that rhythm, that tone for everyone is something truly exciting.
Okay, wonderful. Let's talk, because everyone's talking about AI these days.
Sure.
Everyone's talking about AI these days. You've had some amazing thoughts on this. And just to refresh your memory, we were kind of riffing on what does the future of the world looks like. And the reason that's so relevant is we want to prepare students for that world.
Yeah.
And in many ways, what we're seeing now with the AI revolution is similar to the agricultural revolution, a fundamental paradigm shift in human history, right? In which people went from being hunter-gatherers to having settled settlements.
Sure.
And that changed everything, right? There's no philosophy, there's no poetry for the most part. There's maybe some cave paintings, but there's no like artistic movement when you're hunter-gatherers, because you're always moving. You need civilization to sustain all these good things. And then you had the Industrial Revolution that went a long way in reducing poverty around the world. And so when you had the Agricultural Revolution, it led to a bunch of new things. The Industrial Revolution led to a bunch of new things, services and so on. What do you think will come out of the AI revolution now, based on your experience looking at so many different industries and thinking about the future of the world?
Sure. So I think, before I go to the future, I think what's interesting is the way in which agriculture revolution actually enabled people to go further than they were going as hunter-gatherers, right? So if you are a hunter-gatherer tribe, you're basically moving around in a forest, maybe a larger area, but you're limited by 100 to 150 size of people who can theoretically live together, because that's the only amount of food that they can, gather in a day, and can fetch themselves in. So going closer as a farming community actually enabled them to go farther, right? I think it's the same way with attachment styles in psychology in some sense, right? When you talk,
this is what I love about you, Revant. You connect like agricultural history with psychological attachment styles. So how do you?
Yeah. So again, when you have a secure attachment to a parent, you're able to actually be, far more independent in your later life. Right? So this is what is important, right? When you bring people closer and you give them the security, in this sense, the agriculture revolution brought the security of having enough grains that they were able to store some of those grains, put in a bullock cart, and be like, okay, now we're going further. Let's explore what the next town looks like, explore what the sea voyage looks like, and whatever else, right? And the same thing with the Industrial Revolution, right? Big enablement for the kind of society we saw in the 1800s, 1900s, people just going in big seas and being like, okay, I'm just gonna do Europe to US, and I'm just gonna do Europe to India and so forth. These are things which are never done before in some sense, because there wasn't enough to go by. With the industrial revolution, once you have the industry, once you have enough
surplus
to go by, that the surplus that you can afford to have the weapons, you can afford to have the ships, you can afford to have the other stuff to take you further, was just so important.
Brilliant.
And I think, again, with AI, what's important now is how you are taking AI as a techno optimist in some sense that we were talking about before, rather than being super pessimistic of machines taking over us. I mean, food didn't take over us. The industrial revolution, output, the clothing and others didn't take over us, and so will the AI be a enabler to helping us do better in the world. And again, going back to the cave paintings that you were talking about, the cave paintings went to real paintings and real philosophy and a lot of these civilizations, once these civilizations were in a place of rest, right? If you're always fighting wild animals, or if you're always fighting your neighbor, or if you're always fighting, I don't know, the other countries in today's world, you're never in a place of comfort, of creativity, of expressing yourself. And I think just getting to that place of, hey, now that my day-to-day crammy work, which I was just doing for hours to no end, my Excel analysis and my presentation creation, and I now that I have a thinking buddy who is like smart enough, and now that everybody in the world has a thinking buddy, what else can I do, right? Because I don't theoretically need to be just clocking hours in a job, and that is true for like most jobs around. Now that I don't need to just be clocking hours, what else can I do? Can I build deeper human connections? Can I go think about deeper questions around humanity? Why are we still a single planet species? What would going beyond the solar system look like? What would thinking of a world without poverty look like? What would it imply for there to be no like second class and third class citizens in this world, or second class and third class countries in this world? These are questions that are much easier for someone to ponder over once there is the access that the AI revolution can bring, compared to right now where we're just doing so much of this infighting, anti-globalization and blah blah blah, which just doesn't help anybody. But you're having to do it because people are inherently dissatisfied with the quality of lives they are leading. If you're having to do hard labor for 10, 12 hours a day, and you don't have a means to express yourself, these are the expressions that come out. But if you have all the time in the world to just express yourself and think and ponder and talk to other people and be like, okay, what should we be doing? There is so much good that can come out. That is what truly excites me. Of what the Athena, of what the AI age can bring. Specifically to Athena, I think we've been doing a lot of work around using our proprietary data and training a bunch of AI models that can serve as aids to the consultants, to the writers, and to the mentors that we have here in just taking them from the 0 to 1 journey much faster, right? So if I have to ideate something for a scholar, I'm not staring at a blank wall and just starting to think of ideas, but I have a thought partner that can get me started. Basis the thousands of ideas that we have already done for scholars successfully and implemented at scale. Right. Same way, thousands of essays that we've done for our scholars. It's going to be much easier for us to start outlining essays rather than start with a blank slate. And those are tools that I want to use to halve the amount of time spent in the 0 to 1 journey. of course, there is going to be the amount of time that it takes from the 1 to 10 and actually writing the drafts out or actually doing the projects out is not going to reduce, and it shouldn't reduce, because that is proper time when you're doing the thinking and the doing.
Yeah, but we can focus more on that brain work and that creativity.
Exactly. So the outcomes from this part of the work are so much better if you're investing so much time here rather than investing 4 weeks just ideating, which can be done in 4 minutes.
Right? Understood. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, final curveball question. So I recently became a father. My boy is 2 years old. You have such expansive insight into the future of the world. What are some skills you would encourage me to instill in him? What do you think will be future proof? What do you think will still be necessary 30 years from now? What will the smartest people be working on in 2050, 2060, 2070?
Sure. So I think, look, number one, they're just going to be thinking a lot more, right? So the amount of thinking versus doing that we have been doing is just, moving towards thinking so much more. So if you were doing like 60, 70% of the time as a farmer in a grain society or as hunter-gatherer, you're now like doing for hopefully 50% of the time, and your other 50% time is thinking about the best solution. It's going to move to an 80-20. So how you think is going to be so critical in the world to come. And that thinking needs to be cultivated in some sense. So how do you do like structured thinking?
Let's break that down. Let's operationalize that, not just for my toddler, but so many young people, even teenagers. When we say thinking well, what does that entail? And if you were to create like a program, a curriculum for thinking well, what would the constituents be?
A lot of reading, for sure. But look, I think thinking well basically means how are you able to connect the dots between disparate areas that you've been exposed to, right? And then make sense out of it. So the one part is just how do you go broader in terms of what you have access to in terms of thinking, right? So just doing like, hey, let me do a 5-minute book summary. And since I've read the 5-minute book summary, I've read the book. And I'm just going to do that for 100 books. And so enlightened doesn't work, right? So this aperture broadening is going to include reading and reflecting on what you're reading a lot. So you're going to be having so much more to your disposal that it is your duty in some sense to be reading and reflecting and talking about it to other people. And that is what helps in refining a lot of your thoughts.
Yeah. Quick question on that, because a lot of students today, I would love for them to read more. So are you saying that it would behoove students to read 3 books over 30 book summaries?
So absolutely, yes. So look, what is important is you can read 30 book summaries if you'd like to. No judgment. But when you're reading those 30 book summaries, are you actually processing it?
Yeah, I think that's the key.
Right? So people being like, okay, I'm just gonna boring, so I'm just gonna watch it at 1.5x and 2x, and I'm just gonna watch a reel that just explains this book to me. Great for you and great for entertainment, but for retention, right? What the muscle that you need to build is reading and reflecting. So if you're reading and if you're jotting down some notes on the side, if you're, typing out notes or just telling those notes to, whatever AI assistants you have, far more effective to do that for like even 1 book compared to just saying, I've done 30 books.
Got it. So in a sense, having a conversation with the text, I think that is the muscle you want to exercise.
Absolutely. So that's on the first side, right? In terms of just widening the aperture. So if you do not have a conversation with the text, you haven't absorbed the text in some sense. And I think that the second part to that is the presentation, the discussion, the output side. So that needs to be also super structured. And like I said, the communications that McKinsey in some sense instilled and keeps instilling in people, irrespective of how many years you've spent in the organization, is just so important. Because every single conversation that you're having and you're presenting an insight or an idea to an external person needs to be tailored to say, okay, who am I talking to? How are they going to absorb this information? How should I present it, top down, bottom up? Which idea to present first? What is likely to offend them? How do I take them around this so that not offended? So that is the second big skill. Because like I said, it doesn't matter you have the best idea to, I don't know, double the world economy tomorrow. But if you
The
cannot
persuasion,
tell, if you cannot tell someone,
bring
cannot
people on
convince
board,
someone,
like, because the challenges that we face are so complex that a single individual can't solve them. So you may have that idea, but how do you develop the communication skills to spread that idea? Essentially. So number one is thinking and reading, conversing, engaging with text. Whether it's scribbling in the marginalia,
whatever you like,
or writing, or conversing, presenting it in some manner. I think that's number one. Number two is this communication and being able to communicate in different ways, like that bottom up of here. Let me give you let's spend 4 hours and crank through this, as opposed to let me give you the 30-second elevator pitch. Being able to do both of those. Got it. And then what else would you say are the future-proof skills that 15, 18-year-olds today should absolutely inculcate in order to have fruitful careers?
No, I think, look, fundamentally, these are the two, right? Whatever wrapper you want to add to it, whether you want to be a sports person, or whether you want to be a technocrat, or whether you want to be a techie, or whether you want to be an engineer, or whether you want to be a politician, these two skills are going to be like fundamental to anything that you do. Knowing what you're talking about and being able to communicate that, because you miss any of the halves, you're dead. So I think the worry for me is people using AI as a substitute to thinking.
Got it.
And people using AI to a substitute for doing, right? So if you're using AI as a substitute of thinking, you're like, hey, too long a text, just summarize it for me in 2 sentences. Great to start comprehension. But after you've summarized it, go back to the text and figure out what the heck is this talking about, right? If you're using it as a substitute, you're missing out on the information that you could have absorbed and the insights that are already out there. There's nothing in this world which is completely new. History repeats itself. You're going to learn so much by absorbing the text. The same way on the communication side, if you're just using AI to say, hey, here's stuff from this book, make a PowerPoint presentation for me, and I'm just going to read through the slide. Damn, doesn't work. So again, if you're just using AI for presentation and being like, okay, draft a report for me, it's just going to give you the average answer. It's not going to give you the best answer or your best answer. Giving AI the prompts to say, hey, here is what I read. Here are the 5 takeaways I had. Now draft something for me as a 1 page or whatever that I need to communicate. It's going to give you like far better outcome compared to you giving it a blank slate and being like, okay, just give me something I want to get through. Right? So laziness on both the sides is what worries me, where people either do not do enough on the absorption ideation side or don't do enough on the presentation side. It just becomes AI becomes a substitute rather than a thought partner. So using AI effectively on both counts is a skill that will differentiate between the lazy person who doesn't actually know anything but is pretending to be the world champ, and this person who is actually absorbed and is able to articulate it in such a better way.
Very well put. Okay, amazing. I think one way to think about that is AI doesn't solve end to end; it solves middle to middle. Sure. You need to guide it. You need to know what questions to ask and how. And then the end verification. Is it hallucinating? Is it making up shit? And how do I, or making up stuff? And how do I ensure that this is quality information that I can deliver to my clients or anyone? Okay, lovely.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, Revant. Any other piece of advice for our young people and their parents watching today?
No, I think this is a fantastic time to be, studying. I love the amount of independence. I love the amount of energy that young scholars bring in today. I mean, very honestly, I've been very surprised the last 4 months, the amount of CXOs that I've dealt with versus the amount of CXOs that I've dealt with across 6 years at McKinsey. That's exceptional, like, possibilities for our consultants and our people here. So the amount of exposure they're getting is absolutely fantastic. I think the quality of the scholars that are coming in, and we keep a very high bar to ensure the quality of the input scholars remains really high. But fascinating. How do you engage with them to use their energy, their aspirations, and channel that in a way that they are able to become the best versions of themselves, and which is what sort of attracted me towards Athena. And doing that for our scholars, doing the same thing for our people, right? So I think we've got a fantastic bunch of people in house who are truly motivated and bringing the best of our scholars, and I'm just so humbled and inspired by how they do it day on day. Not easy to just have 10 different stakeholders in your mind for each of the kid, just thinking of the best that you can do day on day, and going above and beyond to do that. I think we've got a fantastic team that can take this forward, and I think we're using the best of technology, we're using the best of creativity to do that, and that's what excites me most about where we are right now. And I think we've really got a launch pad ready to go to the moon and beyond, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
No. Yeah. No, we're living in such VUCA times, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Yeah.
But that's an opportunity for so many of our very capable students to shape the world for the positive, and for our mentors to shape students and the world by extension. Yeah, very much exciting times. Thank you so much, Revant, and super, super enthusiastic about everything that's brewing in Athena in these coming months.
No, likewise. Pleasure chatting.